Hello guys, welcome to Folktales where interesting stories are told. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, share with your friends, and don't forget to share your perspectives in the comment section below. Sofia Martinez had perfected the art of invisible suffering. In the upscale neighborhood of Riverside Heights, where manicured lawns stretched like green carpets and white picket fences stood as symbols of domestic bliss, she had become a master of deception. Her marriage to Nathan looked picture-perfect from the outside. He was a successful insurance executive with a charming smile and expensive suits, while she maintained their beautiful colonial home with the precision of a museum curator. But behind closed doors, their reality was a carefully choreographed dance of fear and control. Nathan's temper had always been volatile, but over their 7-year marriage, it had evolved into something far more sinister. What started as harsh words and slammed doors had gradually escalated into shoves, then slaps, and eventually full-blown beatings that left Sofia counting bruises like a twisted inventory of her pain. She had become an expert at concealment. Foundation became her armor, strategically applied to cover the purple fingerprints on her arms. Long sleeves in summer heat became her uniform, even when neighbors commented on her strange fashion choices. Sunglasses became her shield, hiding the evidence of Nathan's late-night rages when his business deals went sour or when she had somehow failed to meet his impossible standards. The excuses flowed from her lips with practiced ease. "I'm so clumsy." She would laugh to her sister Maria during their weekly phone calls, explaining yet another mysterious injury. "You know me, always walking into doors." The lies tasted bitter, but they were easier than the truth, easier than admitting that the man she had once loved, the man who had promised to cherish and protect her, had become her greatest source of terror. That Sofia's days followed a rigid routine designed to minimize Nathan's triggers. She woke before dawn to prepare his coffee exactly as he liked it. 2 sugars, a splash of cream, served in his favorite navy blue mug. She ironed his shirts with military precision, ensuring not a single wrinkle remained. She planned meals around his preferences, shopped for groceries with the efficiency of a logistics coordinator, and maintained their home like a 5-star hotel. Her friends from college had slowly drifted away, discouraged by her constant cancellations and excuses. "Sofia's become such a homebody," they would say, not knowing that Nathan monitored her every move, questioned every friendship, and made social gatherings feel like interrogations afterward. He had isolated her so gradually, so skillfully, that she hadn't even noticed the walls closing in until she was completely alone. The physical abuse followed patterns she had learned to predict. Nathan's stress levels at work directly correlated with the intensity of his violence at home. Bad quarterly reports meant she would spend the next week walking on eggshells, speaking in whispers, and bracing herself for the inevitable explosion. Good news at the office might buy her a few days of relative peace, but even then, she remained vigilant, knowing that his mood could shift like weather in a storm. She had tried to leave once, 2 years earlier, packing a small bag while Nathan was at a business conference. But he had returned unexpectedly, finding her suitcase hidden in the closet. The beating that followed was so severe that she couldn't walk properly for a week. "You belong to me," he had whispered as she lay curled on the bathroom floor, his voice eerily calm. "If you ever try to leave again, I'll make sure no one ever finds you." The threat wasn't empty. Nathan had connections, resources, and a reputation to protect. He was respected in their community, served on the church board, and donated generously to local charities. Who would believe her word against his? Who would look at his polished exterior and see the monster that emerged behind closed doors? Sofia's reflection in the mirror had become that of a stranger, hollow-eyed, perpetually startled, moving through life like a ghost haunting her own existence. She had learned to make herself small, to speak softly, to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. She had become a shadow of the vibrant woman she once was, the one who had dreamed of becoming a teacher, who had laughed freely and loved fearlessly. Yet somewhere deep inside, buried beneath layers of fear and conditioning, a tiny spark of her former self still flickered. It whispered to her in quiet moments, reminding her that this wasn't love, that she deserved better, that the woman she used to be was still there, waiting to be reclaimed. But that voice grew fainter with each passing day, each new bruise, each Fresh humiliation as autumn painted the leaves in brilliant reds and golds. Sophia couldn't have known that her carefully constructed world of silence was about to shatter completely, that the very foundations of her prison were beginning to crack, and that sometimes the darkest nights come just before the most beautiful dawn. The night that changed everything began like so many others with Nathan's heavy footsteps on the front porch and the familiar sound of his keys jangling with barely controlled aggression. Sophia had been preparing dinner, moving quietly through the kitchen like a dancer performing a well-rehearsed routine. The pot roast was perfectly seasoned, the vegetables cut with precision, and the table set with their wedding china, all desperate attempts to create an atmosphere of domestic tranquility that might shield her from his wrath. But she could tell, from the way he slammed the door, that her efforts would be futile tonight. Nathan's face was flushed with anger, his tie loosened and hanging askew, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled in a way that made Sophia's stomach clench with dread. She had learned to read the signs like a meteorologist tracking an approaching hurricane, the tightness around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched and unclenched, the particular set of his shoulders that meant violence was brewing. "The Henderson account fell through," he announced, his voice deceptively calm as he poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey. 3 months of work, down the drain because some pencil-pushing bureaucrat decided to change the terms at the last minute. He drained the glass in one gulp, then immediately refilled it. "Do you have any idea what this means for my commission? For our mortgage payments?" Sophia nodded sympathetically, her hands trembling slightly as she stirred the gravy. "I'm sorry, honey. Maybe there's still a chance to salvage it? You're so good at what you do, don't patronize me." Nathan's voice exploded across the kitchen like a gunshot. The whiskey glass shattered against the wall behind Sophia's head, amber liquid, and crystal fragments raining down around her. "You have no idea what I'm dealing with, sitting here in your perfect little bubble while I'm out there fighting to keep us afloat." The familiar dance began, Nathan's rage building like pressure in a boiler, while Sophia tried desperately to defuse the situation. She apologized for things that weren't her fault, agreed with accusations that made no sense, and gradually backed toward the corner where she always seemed to end up during these episodes. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she watched Nathan's face transform from the charming mask he wore in public to the twisted expression of fury that haunted her nightmares. "You think this is easy?" he continued, advancing toward her with predatory slowness. "You think I enjoy working 60-hour weeks while you play house? Maybe if you actually contributed something to this marriage instead of being a constant drain on our resources, I could get a job," Sophia whispered, immediately regretting the words. Nathan's face darkened further, and she knew she had made a critical mistake. "A job?" He laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "What could you possibly do? You're pathetic, Sophia. Weak. Useless. No one would hire you for anything meaningful." His hand shot out, gripping her chin with bruising force. "You're lucky I keep you around at all." The first blow came without warning, a backhanded slap that sent her stumbling into the kitchen counter. The second was a closed fist to her stomach that doubled her over, gasping for air. But it was the third strike, a vicious punch to her side as she tried to protect herself, that she would remember most clearly. The sound of her rib cracking was audible even over Nathan's shouting, a sharp snap that seemed to echo through the kitchen like a branch breaking in a storm. Pain exploded through her torso, white-hot and all-consuming. Sophia collapsed to the floor, clutching her side as waves of agony washed over her. She couldn't breathe properly. Each attempt to fill her lungs sent fresh spikes of pain through her chest. Through her tears, she could see Nathan standing over her, his face a mask of cold satisfaction. "Look what you made me do," he said, his voice returning to that eerily calm tone that was somehow more terrifying than his screaming. "This is your fault, Sophia. Your constant nagging, your weakness pushes me to this point." He knelt beside her, his hand almost gentle as he brushed her hair away from her face. "You know I don't want to hurt you, but sometimes you leave me no choice." The pain was unlike anything she had experienced before. Previous beatings had left her with bruises, cuts, and aches that faded with time, but this was different. Something was seriously wrong inside her chest. She could feel it with every shallow breath, every slight movement. When she tried to sit up, the world spun violently, and she nearly vomited from the intensity of the pain. "Get up," Nathan commanded, his brief moment of false tenderness evaporating. "Stop being so dramatic. It's just a bruise." But even as he said it, Sophia could see concern flickering in his eyes. He wasn't stupid. He could tell this injury was more severe than usual. I think something's broken," Sophia gasped, her voice barely audible. The admission felt like defeat, like acknowledging her own fragility in a way that would only fuel Nathan's contempt. Nathan's expression shifted, calculation replacing anger. She could practically see the wheels turning in his mind, weighing the risks of taking her to the hospital against the potential consequences of leaving her untreated. His reputation, his career, his carefully constructed image all hung in the balance. "Fine," he said finally, his voice tight with irritation. "We'll go to the emergency room. But you listen to me very carefully, Sophia." He leaned close, his breath hot against her ear. "You fell down the stairs. You were carrying laundry and missed a step. That's the story, and you're going to stick to it. If you say one single word about what really happened, I will make your life a living hell. Do you understand me?" Sophia nodded weakly, too consumed by pain to do anything else. As Nathan helped her to her feet, supporting her weight with surprising gentleness, she caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. Her face was pale and drawn, her eyes wide with shock and pain. She looked like a broken doll, fragile and damaged beyond repair. The drive to Riverside General Hospital passed in a blur of streetlights and shallow breathing. Nathan kept up a steady stream of coaching, reminding her of their story, threatening her with consequences if she deviated from the script. But beneath his words, Sophia could hear something new: fear. For the first time in their marriage, Nathan was afraid, and that realization planted a tiny seed of something that might have been hope in the depths of her despair. The fluorescent lights of Riverside General's emergency room buzzed overhead, like angry insects as Sophia sat hunched in the uncomfortable plastic chair, each breath a reminder of the fire burning in her chest. Nathan had positioned himself strategically beside her, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder in what appeared to be a gesture of comfort, but felt more like a warning. His thumb pressed against her collarbone with just enough pressure to remind her of their rehearsed story. "Remember," he whispered, his voice barely audible beneath the ambient noise of the busy air. "You were carrying that heavy basket of towels upstairs. You know how clumsy you can be." His smile was perfectly calibrated for any observing medical staff: concerned husband, devoted caregiver, worried partner. But Sophia could feel the steel beneath his gentle tone. When her name was finally called, Nathan immediately stood to accompany her. But the nurse, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, held up a gentle but firm hand. "I'm sorry, sir, but we need to do the initial assessment privately. Hospital policy. You can join us once we've completed the preliminary examination." Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but his public mask never slipped. "Of course I understand. I'll be right here waiting." He squeezed Sophia's shoulder one final time, the pressure conveying volumes about what he expected from her. The examination room felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos of the waiting area. Sophia found herself face to face with Dr. James Thompson, a man in his early 50s whose weathered hands and patient demeanor suggested decades of experience with human suffering. His eyes were a warm brown, the kind that seemed to see beyond surface explanations to deeper truths. "Mrs. Martinez," Dr. Thompson said softly, washing his hands with methodical precision. "Can you tell me what happened tonight?" The words came automatically, as if Nathan were still standing beside her, feeding her the lines. "I fell down the stairs. I was carrying laundry in a heavy basket of towels, and I missed a step. I landed hard on my side." The lie felt thick and clumsy on her tongue, but she delivered it with the practiced ease of someone who had been telling similar stories for years. Dr. Thompson nodded, making notes on his tablet, but Sophia noticed that his eyes never left her face. "That must have been frightening. Can you show me exactly where you're experiencing pain?" As Sophia gingerly indicated the area around her ribs, Dr. Thompson began his examination with gentle, professional hands. But it wasn't just the physical assessment that made her uncomfortable. It was the way he watched her reactions, the careful attention he paid not just to her injuries but to her demeanor, her word choices, the way she flinched when he moved too quickly. "I'm going to need to get some x-rays," he said after completing his initial examination. "The good news is that your vital signs are stable, but I want to make sure we're not dealing with any internal complications." He paused, studying her, face with those perceptive brown eyes. "Mrs. Martinez, in your own words, can you walk me through exactly how this fall happened?" Something in his tone made Sophia's carefully constructed story begin to crumble. I was going upstairs, like I said. The basket was heavy, and She faltered, suddenly aware of how rehearsed she sounded, how the details didn't quite fit together the way real memories should. "Were you alone when this happened?" Dr. Thompson asked, his voice remaining neutral but somehow more focused. "My husband was. He was in the kitchen. He heard me fall and came running." The words felt like ash in her mouth. She could see Nathan, in her mind's eye, standing over her broken form, his face cold with satisfaction rather than concern. Dr. Thompson made another note, then set his tablet aside and pulled up a chair so he could sit at eye level with Sophia. The gesture was simple, but it transformed the dynamic of their interaction from doctor-patient to something more intimate, more human. "Sophia," he said, using her first name with gentle familiarity, "I've been working in emergency medicine for 23 years. I've seen a lot of injuries, and I've learned to recognize patterns." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. "The fracture pattern on your ribs, the bruising on your torso, the way you're protecting yourself. These injuries aren't consistent with a fall downstairs." Sophia's heart began to race, panic flooding her system like ice water. "I don't know what you mean. I told you what happened. I fell, someone hit you," Dr. Thompson said quietly, his words cutting through her protests with surgical precision. "Someone struck you with considerable force, probably with a closed fist. The angle of the fracture, the specific location of the bruising, these are classic signs of interpersonal violence." The room seemed to spin around Sophia as her carefully maintained facade began to crumble. Tears she had been holding back for hours, maybe years, began to spill down her cheeks. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't. Hill. If anyone finds out," Dr. Thompson reached for a box of tissues, offering them with the same gentle professionalism he had shown throughout the examination. "Sophia, you're safe here. Whatever you tell me is confidential, and my primary concern is your health and safety. But I need you to know that what happened to you tonight isn't your fault, and it's not something you have to endure alone." Through her tears, Sophia could see the genuine compassion in his eyes, the kind of human kindness she had almost forgotten existed. For a moment, she teetered on the edge of confession, feeling the weight of years of silence pressing against her chest like a physical force. "He's waiting for me," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "He's right outside, and he'll know if I say anything different from what we agreed on." Dr. Thompson nodded slowly, understanding passing between them like a shared secret. "I'm going to step out for a moment to review your x-rays," he said, standing and moving toward the door. "I'll be back shortly to discuss the results and our treatment plan." But Sophia knew, with a certainty that both terrified and thrilled her, that Dr. Thompson wasn't just going to review x-rays. She could see it in the set of his shoulders, the determined way he moved toward the door. For the first time in years, someone had seen through her lies, recognized her pain, and was prepared to act on her behalf. As the door closed behind him, Sophia sat alone in the sterile examination room, her broken rib throbbing with each heartbeat, and felt something she hadn't experienced in so long she had almost forgotten what it was called. Hope. Dr. Thompson's footsteps echoed down the hospital corridor with purposeful determination as he made his way to the nurse's station. Sophia's x-rays clutched in his hand like evidence of a crime. The images told a story that no amount of rehearsed explanations could contradict: 3 fractured ribs, extensive soft tissue damage, and bruising patterns that painted a clear picture of deliberate violence. In his 2 decades of emergency medicine, he had seen too many women like Sophia, trapped in cycles of abuse and too terrified to seek help. Without hesitation, he picked up the phone and dialed the number he knew by heart. "This is Dr. Thompson at Riverside General. I need to report a suspected case of domestic violence. The victim is currently in the ER with significant injuries, and the perpetrator is in our waiting room." His voice was steady, professional, but there was an underlying steel that spoke to his absolute conviction about what needed to happen next. Within 20 minutes, Officers Maria Santos and David Chun arrived at the hospital, their presence both reassuring and ominous. Dr. Thompson met them at the entrance, quickly briefing them on Sophia's condition and his medical assessment. The patient initially claimed she fell downstairs, he explained, but the injury pattern is completely inconsistent with that explanation. She's terrified, and her husband has been coaching her story since they arrived. Officer Santos, a veteran of domestic violence cases, nodded grimly. We'll need to speak with her privately first, then we'll deal with the husband. Is she stable enough for an interview? Physically, yes. Emotionally? Dr. Thompson paused, considering his words carefully. She's been living in fear for a long time. This is going to take patience and sensitivity. Back in the examination room, Sophia sat staring at her hands, her mind racing with possibilities and consequences. When Dr. Thompson returned with the two police officers, her first instinct was to panic, to retreat into the familiar safety of her lies. But something in Officer Santos's gentle demeanor, the way she introduced herself and explained that they were there to help, began to chip away at the walls Sophia had built around her truth. Mrs. Martinez, Officer Santos said, pulling up a chair just as Dr. Thompson had done, we understand this is difficult, but we need to know what really happened tonight. You're not in trouble, and whatever you tell us will be handled with complete confidentiality until you decide how you want to proceed. The words came slowly at first, like water trickling through a crack in a dam. Sophia described the evening's events in halting sentences, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. She told them about Nathan's rage over the lost business deal, about the whiskey glass shattering against the wall, about the moment when his fist connected with her ribs and she heard something break inside her chest. This wasn't the first time, she admitted, the confession feeling both terrifying and liberating. It's been going on for years. But tonight was different. Tonight, I thought he might actually kill me. Officer Chun took detailed notes while Officer Santos asked gentle but probing questions about the history of abuse, the patterns of violence, and Nathan's threats to prevent her from seeking help. With each answer, Sophia felt a strange sensation, as if she were shedding layers of fear and shame that had accumulated over years of silence. Mrs. Martinez, Officer Santos said when Sophia had finished her account, based on what you've told us and Dr. Thompson's medical assessment, we have probable cause to arrest your husband for aggravated assault. But I want you to understand what that means. Once we take him into custody, this becomes a criminal matter. There will be court proceedings, and you may be called to testify. Sophia's hands trembled as she considered the implications. What if I change my mind? What if I can't go through with it? You don't have to decide everything right now, Officer Santos assured her. But I want you to know that you have options, and there are people who can help you through this process. We have victim advocates, counselors, and legal resources available to you. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, Nathan was growing increasingly agitated. He had been pacing for over an hour, demanding updates from the nursing staff and growing suspicious about the length of Sophia's examination. When he saw the police officers enter the hospital, his carefully maintained composure began to crack. Officer Chin approached Nathan with professional courtesy but unmistakable authority. Mr. Martinez? I'm Officer Chun with the Riverside Police Department. We need to speak with you about your wife's injuries. Nathan's charm offensive went into overdrive immediately. Of course, officer. I'm so worried about her. She's always been clumsy, and tonight she took a terrible fall down our stairs. I've been telling her for months that she needs to be more careful, especially when she's carrying heavy loads. Sir, I need you to come with me, Officer Chin said, his tone shifting from conversational to official. You're under arrest for aggravated assault. The transformation in Nathan's demeanor was instantaneous and dramatic. The polished businessman facade crumbled, revealing the rage that Sophia knew so well. This is ridiculous, he shouted, his voice echoing through the waiting room as other patients and families turned to stare. My wife is lying. She's unstable. She makes things up. You can't believe anything she says. But his protests fell on deaf ears as Officer Chen read him his rights and placed him in handcuffs. The sight of Nathan being led away in restraints, his face red with fury and humiliation, was witnessed by dozens of people in the hospital, colleagues from his office who had come to check on Sophia. neighbors who had heard about the accident, and strangers who would remember the scene and whisper about it for weeks to come. The arrest made the local news within hours. Nathan Martinez, respected insurance executive and pillar of the community, charged with domestic violence. His carefully constructed reputation crumbled overnight as details of the case became public record. Colleagues distanced themselves. Clients canceled policies, and the church board quietly removed his name from their roster. From her hospital bed, where she was being kept overnight for observation, Sophia watched the news coverage with a mixture of fear and amazement. For the first time in 7 years, Nathan couldn't reach her, couldn't threaten her, couldn't control her narrative. The truth was out, spreading like ripples across the surface of their community, and there was no taking it back. Dr. Thompson stopped by her room before his shift ended, checking on her progress and offering words of encouragement. "You did something incredibly brave tonight," he told her. "I know it doesn't feel that way right now, but you've taken the first step toward reclaiming your life." As Sophia drifted off to sleep, her ribs still aching but her spirit feeling lighter than it had in years, she realized that the woman she used to be, the one who had dreams and opinions and the courage to speak her truth, was still there, waiting to be rediscovered. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the marble corridors of the Riverside County Courthouse, her reflection in the polished floors showing a woman transformed. The hollow-eyed, frightened creature who had cowered in hospital examination rooms was gone, replaced by someone who carried herself with quiet dignity and hard-won strength. Her ribs had healed completely, but more importantly, so had something deeper: her sense of self-worth, her belief that she deserved better, her understanding that love should never come wrapped in violence. The legal proceedings had been a marathon of depositions, court appearances, and testimony that forced Sophia to relive her darkest moments in excruciating detail. Nathan's high-powered attorney had tried every tactic in the book, painting Sophia as an unstable woman seeking revenge, questioning her credibility, and attempting to minimize the severity of her injuries. But Dr. Thompson's medical testimony was unshakable. The X-rays told their own story, and Sophia's quiet, consistent recounting of years of abuse had resonated with the jury. Nathan himself had undergone his own transformation during the months leading up to trial. The confident, charming businessman had been replaced by a desperate man whose world was collapsing around him. His insurance company had terminated his employment immediately following his arrest. His country club membership had been revoked. Former friends crossed the street to avoid him, and his own family had distanced themselves from the scandal. In the courtroom that morning, Sophia sat in the witness section, flanked by her victim advocate, Sarah Chun, and her sister Maria, who had flown in from Phoenix to provide support. The gallery was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and members of the domestic violence support group that had become Sophia's lifeline during the darkest months of the legal process. Judge Patricia Williams, a stern woman with silver hair and penetrating eyes, called the court to order. Nathan sat at the defendant's table, his once immaculate appearance now showing the strain of months of legal battles and public humiliation. His shoulders were hunched, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his hands shook slightly as he gripped the edge of the table. "Mr. Martinez," Judge Williams began, her voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades on the bench. "You have been found guilty of aggravated assault, criminal threatening, and intimidation of a witness. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say to this court?" Nathan rose unsteadily, his lawyer's hand on his arm for support. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, a stark contrast to the commanding presence he had once projected. "Your Honor, I want to apologize to my wife, to Sophia. I know I hurt her, and I know what I did was wrong. I was under a lot of stress at work, and I was drinking too much, but that's no excuse for my behavior." He turned toward Sophia, his eyes pleading, desperate. "Sophia, please. I know I can change. I've been going to anger management classes, and I've stopped drinking completely. We can work this out. We can go to counseling together. I love you, and I know you still love me. Don't throw away 7 years of marriage over one mistake." The courtroom fell silent, waiting for Sophia's response. She could feel the weight of dozens of eyes upon her, the expectation that she might soften, might give him the forgiveness he was begging for. 6 months ago, she would have. 6 months ago, she would have believed his promises, accepted his excuses, and walked back into the prison of their marriage. But the woman sitting in that courtroom was not the same person who had lied about falling. Downstairs, Sophia rose slowly, her voice clear and steady when she spoke. Nathan, what happened that night wasn't one mistake. It was the culmination of 7 years of systematic abuse, control, and intimidation. You didn't break my rib in a moment of anger. You broke my spirit over years of deliberate cruelty. She paused, gathering her thoughts, feeling the strength that had grown within her during months of therapy and support group meetings. You're right about one thing. I did love you once. I loved the man I thought you were when we got married. But that man was a lie, a mask you wore to hide who you really are. The real you is someone who finds pleasure in causing pain, who uses love as a weapon, and who sees other people as possessions to be controlled. Nathan's face crumpled, tears streaming down his cheeks as he realized that his last desperate gambit had failed. Please, Sophia, I'm begging you, give me another chance. Sophia shook her head, her voice remaining calm despite the emotional weight of the moment. It's too late, Nathan. I'm finally free, and I'm never going back to being your victim. I hope you get the help you need, but that's not my responsibility anymore. My responsibility is to myself, to the woman I used to be, and the woman I'm becoming. Judge Williams nodded approvingly before delivering her sentence. Mr. Martinez, you will serve 18 months in the county correctional facility, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You are also ordered to complete a certified batterer intervention program and to have no contact with the victim. A permanent restraining order will remain in effect. As the bailiff led Nathan away in handcuffs, he looked back one final time at Sophia, his face a mask of desperation and disbelief. But she didn't flinch, didn't look away, didn't show even a flicker of the sympathy he was hoping for. She watched him disappear through the courthouse doors with the same steady gaze she had maintained throughout her testimony. Outside the courthouse, Sophia stood on the steps in the warm afternoon sunshine, surrounded by the people who had supported her through the darkest period of her life. Sarah Chun, her victim advocate, squeezed her hand. You did it, Sophia. You found your voice, and you used it to save yourself. Maria wrapped her sister in a fierce hug. I'm so proud of you. Mom and Dad would be proud too. Their parents had passed away years earlier, but Sophia felt their presence in that moment, their love and strength flowing through her. Dr. Thompson, who had attended the sentencing, approached with a warm smile. How are you feeling, Mrs. Martinez? It's Ms. Rodriguez now, Sophia corrected gently, having reclaimed her maiden name as part of her journey toward independence. And I feel free. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. As the crowd dispersed and the reporters moved on to other stories, Sophia stood alone on the courthouse steps, looking out at the city that had once felt like a prison, but now seemed full of possibilities. She had enrolled in community college to pursue her long-abandoned dream of becoming a teacher. She had found a small apartment in a safe neighborhood, decorated with her own choices and filled with her own belongings. She had reconnected with old friends and made new ones through her support group. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. She knew that healing from trauma was a lifelong process, that there would be difficult days and moments of doubt. But she also knew that she was stronger than she had ever imagined, that she had survived the worst and emerged not just intact, but transformed. As she walked down the courthouse steps toward her new life, Sophia felt the sun on her face and realized that she was no longer afraid. She was free, she was strong, and she was finally, truly alive. Moral lesson: Sophia's journey from victim to survivor reminds us that even in our darkest moments, hope can emerge from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it takes just one person, a doctor, a friend, or a stranger to see through our carefully constructed lies and offer us the lifeline we desperately need. Her story teaches us that healing is possible, that we are stronger than we know, and that no one deserves to live in fear. Love should lift us up, not tear us down. It should make us feel safe, valued, and free to be our authentic selves. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, remember that help is available, that speaking up takes incredible courage, and that there is always hope for a better tomorrow. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to Folktales for more inspiring stories, and share this with friends who might need to hear Sophia's message of hope and resilience. Most importantly, share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. Your voice matters, and your story could be the encouragement someone else needs to find their own path to freedom.